Recently, I bought myself a PlayStation Now subscription for the first time. There are not many new games coming out at the moment, so I was like, alright, let's play some old games. Sadly, my internet connection absolutely sucks, so I had to resolve the games that came out on the PS4 because you can actually download those directly on the console. And one of these games was Bioshock Infinite, the remastered version. Now, the last time I played this was in 2013 on the Xbox 360. Back then, I remember absolutely falling in love with the game's world, story, and music, but being pretty disappointed with the gameplay and especially the performances. The game could barely hold 30 FPS, and during gunfights, frames would just be thrown out the window, which also didn't help the gameplay. From a visual standpoint, the art was fantastic, but the graphics themselves were blurry and almost nauseating during some sequences. So obviously I was really excited to try it once again on the PS5 since I'm not a PC player, so I never had the chance to experience it the way it was supposed to be experienced. And for some reason, I never played the Bioshock Remastered Collection when it first came out on PS4, so I don't know how these games are performing on last-gen consoles, but I wanted to share what my experience has been like on PlayStation 5. After recently completing it at a gorgeous and super stable 4K 60 FPS, I can safely say that Bioshock Infinite is one of the best first-person shooters of all time. At least, it's probably my own personal favorite. Mechanically speaking, it's not perfect, but the whole package is simply exceptional. Playing this on PS5 was like a completely different experience to what I played in 2013. I know PC players have been playing this for years now, but as a console player, going back to this game in this particular state was just a treat. First, the gameplay was much better than I remembered, mainly because of the improved frame rate. Now the gunplay is really fun, responsive, and super dynamic. My only issue with it is the fact that you can only carry 2 guns at a time, which kinda sucks. Fortunately, in typical Bioshock fashion, you also have powers that you can use. You can wield electricity, fire bombs, you can possess enemies, create shockwaves, and even shoot birds out of your hands. Yep, that's a thing. Before, I wasn't a fan of the combat because I found it chaotic, and not the good kind of chaos. I'm talking about single-digit frame rate kind of thing. But now, in 60 FPS, the combat encounters are still messy, but in a good way this time around. It doesn't reinvent the wheel, but the game does add a couple of things to keep it fresh. Like the Skyline, this rail system that you can use to quickly move around the battlefield, which does give the player a much bigger sense of freedom when compared to the original game. Booker, our protagonist, isn't the most agile hero, but once you have access to the Skyline, he suddenly becomes a circus performer. But I'm not complaining, it's a really fun addition that looks freaking badass. Infinite also introduces a companion character, Elizabeth. Thankfully, she can defend herself, so you don't have to think about whether or not she's in danger all the time, which is usually what makes or breaks companions in games. Elizabeth can actually be quite useful. She can find gear, ammunitions, and can even open portals to other dimensions, meaning she can bring in all sorts of environmental features like covers, ledges, and things like that. Infinite's gameplay was definitely a step forward for the franchise, but gameplay was never the main selling point of the Bioshock games for me. Even though they've always been fun to play and the powers did add an interesting twist, the story, the themes, and the world it created were always the star of the show. Looking back on it, it's easy to see how this game was so ahead of its time. The original Bioshock was already ahead of its time, so it probably shouldn't be a surprise, but playing Infinite again in 2021 reminded me how absolutely brilliant it was and how most games coming out today don't even come close to it, especially in the creative department. Because this game is one of the most imaginative I've ever seen. Whether it's in the visuals or the writing, this game is bursting with personality. It's a super unique and interesting blend of politics, physics, and science fiction that manages to compel throughout its 15-hour campaign. There's just nothing like it. Colombia is such a fascinating city. First off, it floats. That's all I have to say about this, but most importantly, it's filled with details that turn the environments into actual storytelling components. It's a city that feels real to me. It manages to make me believe in it with such ease, it's actually insane, especially for a game released in 2013. That was quite the year for video games, by the way. Infinite came out the same year as The Last of Us and GTA 5. Good lord. And if The Last of Us was a milestone for character-driven storytelling, and if Grand Theft Auto 5 was a milestone for realistic open worlds, I think it's safe to say that Bioshock Infinite completely changed the face of world building. You could say that Rapture in the original Bioshock already did that, but in my opinion, Columbia pushes things even further. This is a gorgeous looking place. Everywhere you look is like this vibrant watercolor painting, and even when things get ugly, there's a strange romantic quality to it. But the key element to Columbia's successful design is the fact that everything tells a story. From the posters on the walls to the songs you hear on the radio, from the people you meet to the shops you visit, all these carefully crafted elements participate in the creation of this highly believable world. By just walking around, you see where these people come from, how they live, and what they believe in. And that's where things get interesting, because this is not a typical society, to say the least. Bioshock Infinite tackles a bunch of themes that proved to be pretty controversial when the game originally came out. It talks about racism, religion, redemption, and so much more. Just to give you an idea, it's a place where John Wilkes Booth is being idolized for killing Abraham Lincoln, whom they view as wicked for abolishing slavery. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. Columbia has many more dark secrets that basically rewrite American history under the lens of the prophet, the man behind the city, and his belief. And on top of all these political themes, Infinite is also a story about alternate realities. And when you add those science fiction elements to the political subtext I just described, you turn a great story into one that is, simply put, phenomenal. When I finished this game for the first time, I couldn't stop thinking about it. As someone who really enjoys movies that messes with my brain like Inception, Donnie Darko, or The Matrix, I knew Bioshock Infinite was the kind of game that would stick with me in the long run. Simply because it made me feel like an H.P. Lovecraft character going insane at 3 in the morning trying to come up with theories. And I love that. And can we talk about that ending for a second? Those last minutes blew my damn mind, even during my second playthrough. Bioshock Infinite probably has one of the best endings of all time, not only in games but in movies and books and whatever art form you can name. It connects the whole series together in a brilliant way, and it even adds some kind of meta commentary on the process of players making choices in games. Yes, we could talk about plot holes, but hey, let's be honest here. Have you ever seen a single multiverse or time travel story without plot holes? Yeah, that's what I thought. Except this one. Honestly, I feel like no matter how much I praise this game, it doesn't do it justice. It's a work of art that should be studied by anyone who's even remotely interested in building fictional worlds and creating engaging and unique science fiction stories. Bioshock Infinite is really something that must be experienced. It's a game that aged extremely well, and if you still haven't played it yet, now is the perfect time. Thank you guys for watching this video. I had such a blast going back to this game almost 8 years after its launch, and like I said at the beginning, it's pretty slow right now in terms of new releases, so I'm just going back to some old favorites of mine I haven't played in a while, like Darksiders, God of War 3, Rogue Galaxy, which is this super old PS2 RPG I haven't played in like 15 years, which is just insane to think of. I mean, some of my viewers are younger than that, so yeah. If you enjoy my content, please consider subscribing to the channel for more, drop a like, and tell me in the comments what you've been playing recently. So that's pretty much it, and I'll see you guys later.